The Camel Kids Foundation really strives to introduce books that have lead characters of color, primarily because that's the first thing that the kids see when they look at the cover. Whether or not the story is written by someone who is, a person of color or illustrated by them, they don't know that until they read it. But it's imperative for me to showcase a child a book that has someone who looks like them on the cover. And I think that the children who are not of color can also benefit from reading a story by someone who is of color. Because 9 times out of 10, unless they live under a rock, they have friends or schoolmates or playmates or people in dance class that are of color. And it's important for them to know how to relate to those people.
Hi, it's Steph, and that was the voice of MARELLE Camel. She is an actor and the founder of a nonprofit called the Camel Kids Foundation, which works to put free books in the hands of young students, books that feature authors, illustrators, and most importantly, lead characters of color. Camel Kids Foundation also helps put free school supplies in the hands of educators. This interview was done in a slightly noisy space in West Hollywood, California in early 2020, well before the isolation due to COVID-19 had become a thing in the US, and before thousands and thousands of people took to the streets nationwide and worldwide to march and to protest in the aftermath of the horrifying murder of George Floyd. So many things about this episode tell a story of how life has changed even since early 2020. We met at a co-working space for one. The room we recorded this in might have been 6 feet wide. But most importantly, the core of the messaging shared by MARELLE in this interview is more current and more relevant than ever. So please work with me on the background noise and focus on the words and wisdom of my guest. In this episode, among many other great points, MARELLE shares what it means to her to turn around for someone else. And as we listen, let's look inside ourselves to discover what all of us can do to end systemic racism. What one action can we take today and tomorrow and next week? Are we willing to look in the mirror? And if not, why not? Let's think on that. And let's act on that and make this world a better place for everyone. At the end of the podcast, I'm going to share a reading list provided by MARELLE for you or your child or your classroom or your home. This is the Another Door Opens podcast, and I'm your host, Stephanie Himango. So without further ado, here is MARELLE Camel.
MARELLE Camel, but I like to include my first initial, which is an L in front of MARELLE. So it's MARELLE Camel.
Okay.
MARELLE is spelled MARELLE, Camel, like the animal,
Okay.
CAMEL.
And what does the L stand for?
I like to keep that
To yourself.
to myself, yes.
And what is the name of your foundation?
I run an organization called the Camel Kids Foundation. In general, what we do is we provide free school supplies for educators so that they don't have to use their underpaid salaries to do that, here in Los Angeles and New York as well. And we also provide their students with free books for their class to introduce them to authors and illustrators and lead characters of color, because we feel like it's good, it's important for kids this day and age to really see themselves reflected in books. And in the movies that we see now in this coming of age, we've seen a lot of representation by people of color. But I feel like in books, especially in children's books, pictures books, that's important for the little kids to see.
Yeah, especially picture books from that early age.
Mm-hmm.
What inspired you to create this foundation in the first place?
My mother's an educator. My older sister is also an educator. And I've seen firsthand what it takes to provide for your classroom. And a lot of that is dipping into your own pocket to buy classroom essentials. It is like, I want to say, don't quote me, but it's like 95, 99% of teachers across the country actually provide classroom essentials by themselves out of their own pocket because they don't have it. They get maybe a small stipend, but things that they need are really costly, and it takes a lot of money, so they have to use their own money to do that. And I want to provide like a way of relief for them.
I looked it up, and the statistic I found was 94%. 94% of U.S. teachers spend their own money on school supplies. It's a two-pronged approach to helping early education, it sounds like, both helping the teacher and helping the student.
Yes.
Did you do any research into how many young people have books of their own at a young age?
Yes. A lot of the kids that we serve, the Camel Kids Foundation serve, do not have a personal library. And I think that that's important. I think that a love for books starts really at home and not at school.
In fact, according to the research I found online, 61% of low-income families have no books at all in the home for children. And 80% of preschool and after-school programs serving low-income populations have no age-appropriate books for their children.
So I wanted to kind of add to the child's personal library, things that they can put in their room, stories that they can read to themselves at bedtime or at any other time of the day, just so they can have access to it. I feel like giving those books to those kids is, it's very essential, yeah.
And what does that look like? I know that you visit schools, so tell me sort of how that works.
It depends on the age. It's really a fun game that we do because with the older kids, we will come to class. It's mainly a presentation with everyone. So we introduce what the Camel Kids Foundation is and who I am and why I'm in their classroom. And then we chat about the story and we talk about how the story relates to certain aspects of their lives, whether it's a book that's dealing with bullying, or if it's a book that's dealing with self-esteem issues. We talk about how they're affected by that and how they can relate to that, especially with the older kids who are able to give feedback.
When you say older kids, what age?
Like 4th, 5th grade.
Okay.
Our younger kids who are into picture books, it's different. So we do story time, like everyone sit on the carpet. I like the floor. I really do. So
I have great memories of the floor myself.
Yeah. So we like to sit on the floor and we read the story. I read the story to them and show them pictures, and we talk about the book as we go along, as we turn the pages. The older kids like to read the books themselves. So what we do is we take the first chapter, if it's a chapter book that we're introducing to the 4th and 5th grade class, also 3rd graders too. They will each take a turn, like reading a paragraph until they've read. Whoever wants to volunteer to read, not all of them do, but that's okay. So I like both the older group and the younger group, like reading it to them, but I really like the older group. Maybe a hair more because they can talk to me and talk about the story.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. What kind of discussions come up when you actually can do the interactive discussion pieces?
I remember one time we were in a class for like 2.5 hours. It might have been 3, but usually we're there for like 20 minutes, 15 minutes. But we were in this class for about 2.5, 3 hours. And it was a book about, I believe it was Miami Jackson Sees It Through, where Miami Jackson's a little boy. I think he's in 3rd or 4th grade. And it's the summer right before school starts. And he's about to get a new teacher. And there's a teacher that he really wants to get in his school. But it turns out once he arrives to school that teacher has moved to a different school. And now it's someone else. And it's a teacher that's very stern. Okay. So he has a hard time trying to make it through 4th grade. Mm-hmm. And we talked about that with the kids. Has there ever been a teacher that, was very difficult for you or that you considered mean? Why did you consider them mean? And they talked about, coming from a different school or being at the school now, their relationship with their teachers. So,
did you ever have any of those experiences yourself, like when children were saying something about favorite teachers or not feeling welcome or whatever? Did you walk through that? Did you ever change schools?
I did. But I remember very vividly my 2nd grade teacher. I don't even know where she is now, but I feel like she might be no longer with us because she was really old when I was in 2nd grade. So
was she really, or was she like 25 and you thought she was old?
I feel like she was definitely in her 60s, somewhere around there. So, but yeah, she was very hard. And so much so that I couldn't tolerate it, that I would like hide in the bathroom all day.
Gosh.
And I would never, like my mother would never get a phone call. Like she would never report that I was absent in class. Like that was just my thing. And my sisters and I are all close in age.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would come to check. They knew that I would have liked to avoid my teacher. So they would come and check on me in the bathroom and make sure I was okay, and spend a little time with me. Then they'd go back to their classes. They had teachers who were great. And I wish that was me. But unfortunately, that wasn't my story. And I shared that with the students. And a few of them could relate. And I did definitely tell them that that's not the way to handle it. You don't hide in the bathroom. Okay. You don't hide in the bathroom when there's a teacher.
Yeah.
But there's counselors in schools now that kids can talk to when they're having a hard time, whether it's with a student or with a teacher. So that is an approach that they can take if it's difficult for them. But that was a conversation that we did have.
Wow. How long ago did you start your foundation?
So we've been rowing our boat for a year, and it's been hard and challenging and good and fun. It's been a very learning experience, I can tell you that. There are certain things that I did not know about as far as running a nonprofit organization is concerned, but there are so many things that I came into it already knowing because I had previously worked at a nonprofit organization, so I used that experience as well. But it's definitely been a challenge, but a good challenge in ways. Like it gives you that like learning to ride a bike or learning to drive. It's hard, but it's fun at the same time.
Right. And it's incremental. And you said it's based both in Los Angeles and New York City, right?
Yes.
Why those locations?
And we're looking to branch to Atlanta as well. That's where I'm from.
Okay.
So I have a sister who lives in New York, and I visit New York a lot. And there are kids in public school that can really benefit from our organization. And we have decided that since I'm kind of bi-coastal, we would do it on both coasts as well.
Is there a favorite book you remember from your childhood or something that resonated with you in terms of reading or books?
Yes, there is. One in particular, Pippi Longstocking. That was one of my favorites. Childhood reads.
And why do you think that is?
I just was so taken by this little girl who was raising herself, essentially. And, as a child, I wanted that. Even though I was grateful for my mother, there are certain things that I felt like I would have freedom if I was living by myself, just by myself, raising myself, getting myself to school, getting to mischief. It was one of those things that I kind of aspired to be, but also I was kind of like afraid for her, because she didn't have guidance. But I found that book very interesting as a child.
And what was your upbringing like in terms of the attention to books? You said your mom's an educator.
Oh, yes. She is an educator to the T, okay? So if we didn't have homework, we had homework. She would give us homework. And even if we did have homework, she would give us homework by herself. Our summers were spent at the library. If one of my sisters or I even asked a question like, I wonder if there's butterflies that have the same pattern, that would be a book report that we would have to do. It's just like if you asked a question, you would learn it, and it would be all of us, that would have to do that book report as well. So, yeah. So being the daughter of an educator is hard, but it's good at the same time because, you learn so much. Like, I don't want to say you're smarter than kids who don't have teachers as parents, but you might be.
Did you know early on that you wanted to do something to help promote reading?
I knew that I wanted to do something for kids. It wasn't necessarily as far as reading was concerned, but because I was a reader and I love stories, I love to write, I wanted to give kids that newfound love and that books are not a chore, because a lot of parents tend to do that. You're going to read for this hour, and it becomes like the kid is very repelled by books now because it's something that was mandated that they had to do. I wanted my foundation to introduce to kids that books are fun, and it's something that they could be able to, be happy about picking up a book or learning, a new story or learning something about a character, because it's beneficial for them and because it's not a chore.
Yeah, it can be a place of imagination and wonder and exploration or a chore if you frame it up that way.
Yeah, and I don't like it that way. a lot of adults when I was a child really did frame it that way, that, you had to read. And I feel like children shouldn't have to read, but they should know that there is knowledge in books and it should be something that you should want to do. Because if you want to get smarter, you've got to read.
And now your foundation has a specific sort of orientation that you want children of color to be able to see children of color in their books.
Yes.
Talk to me more about that.
The Camel Kids Foundation really strives to introduce books that have lead characters of color, primarily because that's the first thing that the kids see when they look at the cover. Whether or not the story is written by someone who is, a person of color or illustrated by them, they don't know that until they read it. But it's imperative for me to showcase a book that has someone who looks like them on the cover. But I also want to triumph all of our, people of color who are authors, because they don't get a lot of credit as well. So I want to introduce their books to kids and expose their works to kids, including illustrators of color as well. And I think that the children who are not of color can also benefit from reading a story by someone who is of color, because 9 times out of 10, unless they live under a rock, they have friends or schoolmates or playmates or people in dance class that are of color. And it's important for them to know how to relate to those people. So by them reading and engaging in the stories, they're more knowledgeable,
Right.
So they can interact better, and they're more compassionate and understanding as far as stories are concerned, as far as history is concerned, as far as different upbringings are concerned. They're introduced to that through different stories.
Yeah. And I just believe stories so strongly shine lights on the blind spots.
Yeah, they do. They do. It's not so much like an in-your-face ordeal, but more in a this is the world we live in ordeal. Right. Like it is what it is,
I just want to add a little more information here about the world we're living in. Since this interview was recorded in early 2020, I reached out to MARELLE by email in June. In the midst of the mass protests for Black Lives Matter and to end police brutality and systemic racism, I'd like to read for you here what MARELLE wrote to me with her permission. These are MARELLE's words. Racism has been here. It's been in this country forever, and since the current presidency, it is now just as blatant as it was in the 1950s and early 60s. But the difference is, my people are educating our children on the prejudices and the oppression and the economic disadvantages that still exist in this country, while some, not all, white people are turning a blind eye. They refuse to understand why we protest and why we proclaim that our Black lives matter. But the Camel Kids Foundation will continue to let our Black children know that they are valued and celebrated, and that their stories do matter. We will continue to educate all children that Black and brown children are just as cute and inspiring and smart, and that they are worthy to be on the front cover of books as well. We will continue to encourage all educators to teach all parts of our history and present, instead of omitting the parts that make the Board of Education uncomfortable. We will continue to serve the communities that are often overlooked and stigmatized as quote-unquote ghetto. We will continue to encourage the high school students of these communities to put college in their future and inspire them to make their communities a better place. It is unfortunate that they fear the police, but I am proud to know that the adults in these communities, here in Los Angeles and across the country, understand the importance of pressuring the proper channels to enact change in policies. Change is happening. And that is the end of the email that MARELLE sent to me and has allowed me to read to you with her permission. How do you do your outreach? How do you make contact with schools or teachers, educators?
I have a list in my email of all of the Title I schools here in Los Angeles. And what the Camel Kids Foundation mainly aims to do is to serve Title I schools. They are the schools that need the most assistance. Mm-hmm. And so I feel that the services that we offer can very much benefit the students in those schools. There are certain times that we do make an exception. It's because I'm a product of both worlds. I went to public school for the first half of grade school. And then from 7th all the way to 12th, I went to private school. And it's a shame that there's a stigma that private school students are rich and don't need assistance. I know that to be false because my sisters and I were all in private school at the same time, but my mother still struggled. Mm-hmm. Tuition is very expensive, and there are sacrifices that are made by parents, whether both parents are in the home doing the sacrificing, or whether it's a single mother like my mother was, raising 3 children, trying to provide the best education for them, thinking that public school is the best, which I think it might be, but I feel like both worlds are important, both private and public school. The education that you get from both of them are very much important. But there are students in those schools who could use our services as well.
What would you love to see happen so that you have greater reach? Do you need more volunteers? Do you need more awareness of your foundation?
Yes, actually, we definitely need exposure. And more hands. So yes, volunteers would be a huge plus, but I would like to incorporate, I feel like high schoolers would be interested in giving back, especially some of them it's required in order to put on your college application. You need some volunteer hours as well. So it's a way for them to kill 2 birds with 1 stone by volunteering with our organization. But I feel like they would be enriched by volunteering. Our Book Pals program, which is when we go into the schools and deliver the books to the kids, is not the only program that we have. We also have a snack box program, which we take a box full of snacks to their teachers as well, because a lot of the kids come to school hungry. So we like to provide that for them as a way to bridge them over until lunchtime, because we don't know if they're going to eat when they go home. So we like to provide the snack box in the class for the teacher, as well as our School Supplies for Educators program. I think our School Supplies for Educators program is probably our most costly. School supplies are so expensive.
And what are we talking about? Is it any electronic stuff, or is it more basic like paper and pencils?
There are calculators, so that's the only electronic thing that we have, but mainly like craft supplies and cleaning supplies. My mother is really big on that. She's just like, we need to sanitize everything. So like we've got Clorox wipes in there and wet ones for kids' faces and hands, and hand sanitizer as well. Disinfectant sprays, because kids carry germs, and a lot of the kids' teachers really can't or don't want to phone in a sick day. So we like to prevent that as well. We also put in airborne for them as well. But mainly craft supplies that they need, paper, rulers, things that they can use for group projects for their students. It adds up. And I can see why a lot of teachers spend so much money, buying those supplies, because they are expensive.
Yeah. And your mom is still teaching now, right?
She is still teaching. She is, I believe it's 28 years now, or it will be 29 in October. It's either 28 or 29 years teaching. Yeah.
Marelle emailed me later to say it was nearly 25 years that her mom has been teaching. How old are you?
I am 32.
Do you have sort of a new respect for what your mom has done as a grown woman now?
I think I've always had this insight in what she does and the value. And I think I've always appreciated her as an educator in what she contributes, not just to my life and my sister's lives, but to the people that she's taught.
What grade does she teach?
Kindergarten. She teaches kindergarten now, but she's gone back and forth between kindergarten and pre-K. She's phenomenal, and I've seen her work, and it's just like, wow. I could never do that. I could never. I don't understand the connection that a teacher has with a student in order for like the light bulb to go off. Like they've learned something today. I can't make that relation. I applaud her definitely because it is a skill. But yeah, I've always appreciated her in that capacity as an educator. Yeah.
Have you been to her classroom with Camel Kids Foundation?
Oh, no. All the time. I go to her class whenever I'm in Atlanta and disrupt. We don't do anything. I teach with air quotes to the best of my ability. But I haven't gone with Camel Kids, which is something that I am really hopeful in doing in the future and stopping by with our organization. Yeah.
Did you ever think you would follow in your mom's footsteps being a teacher?
No, I definitely didn't see it. I never hoped to be a teacher, never wanted to be a teacher. I think careers really take passion, and you really have to really want to do what it is and really love to do what it is that you want to do. And that was never something that I wanted to do. Although I admire her, I was never something I thought that I could do personally or wanted to do. I knew that when I was in university that film and television was something that I wanted to do. I was very good at writing. I still am, by the way. But I fell in love with the acting part of it. And so why not do it both?
Did you go to school in Atlanta, or where did you go?
I went to school in Huntsville. It's a private school called Oakwood University. Yeah, they're in Huntsville, Alabama. Yeah. It was an experience, I should say. Gained some very strong friendships from being in university at Oakwood. I was very much enriched my experience, my college life experience, and I always try to tell the college students and the high school students that we are interactive with that going away to college is very important. A lot of them shy away from that. They want to stay home. I feel like you grow up when you leave the nest, So to go to a school in the neighborhood is great. Yes, you're furthering your education, great. But it really takes balls in order to move and start all over, making new friends, being in a different scenario. It really allows you to really grow on and pull on some personal strings without holding on to home strings as well. Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself?
And that I was a crybaby my freshman year.
I think everybody is, except for the kids that are on the ceiling with joy.
Yeah, I had a hard time my freshman year. Wow. I never realized my attachment to my mother until it was time to leave. Mm-hmm. So freshman year was very hard for me. But after that, it was like I essentially lived on campus. Like even in summertime, my sister and I were working on campus. Like we were rarely home. It's just one of those things. It just happens. Like our bodies as humans are natural adapters. And so you adjust and you roll with it. And it becomes something that you're now attached to and you don't want. So when it's all over, you're like, wow, I won't be in this place anymore. Like college is over. Mm-hmm. But when you initially start, it's very scary and very jarring. And there are lots of tears, but you chug through it,
Yeah, you find your capabilities.
Yeah. And build great partnerships as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it's mainly how I got through was very much faith-based. I feel like my faith really got me through being in foreign land, I should say, because college was definitely foreign for me. And having bits of my community with me. There were several of my high school classmates that went to the same university as I did. Plus, my older sister's a year older than me. She was already at that school. Mm-hmm. I have an identical twin sister, and so we were all there together. So that kind of helped. I've always been a go-getter, an adventurous person, so I didn't really feel like I was not going to make it through. That was not an option. I was 21 when I came out of Oakwood, and I came here when I was 24. Okay. So there was some time in between that I was just in Atlanta, just like, what do I do? I'm an adult, but I'm not really feeling like an adult, Mm-hmm. You're still with your mom. I found that 3-year period, very hard for me. It was about discovering my identity and who I was as a person, who I was going to be, the things that I wanted to do, the things that I could do, and how could I, make my goals reality. And it took a lot of email sending and phone calls and letter writing in order to get externships and invitations to work in different production offices. And that led me to Los Angeles.
I asked Marelle, what did she do in that 3-year window to stay motivated and positive? Did she exercise? Did she dance? What did she do?
I think you did some research. I'm almost certain that you did. But yes, I did dance, ballet and contemporary and hip hop. And I found a love for Pilates and yoga during that time. So I would invite my mom to come and see me when we were in dance class. That was my release. That did, by me sometime and really helped me deeper discover who I was as a person. I've always been very creative, and dance is definitely a way to express myself. That really did help me, especially yoga. It was the stillness about it that really got me to really like hone in and focus, which I think is necessary as a young adult to have. So leaving the nest again wasn't something that I feared. It was something that I welcomed. I was ready for change. I had to leave Atlanta and come out here in order to find, the woman that I am today.
What advice would you give someone who's in sort of a in-between spot like you were back then?
I think consistency is key. You can't just start something and wish and hope for it to do the best. Like, you really have to be consistent in working toward your goal. It can't just be a wish, a thought, or a dream. You can't just dream it. You really have to do whatever it is that you want to do. You've got to put in the work. So that would be my advice, to really put in the work and be consistent in what it is that you want.
Anything from your past, like best advice you ever received, and it doesn't even have to be applicable to you now, but things that have been valuable to you to have heard?
To turn around. My mother says this all the time. She says, turn around, child, just turn around. A lot of people like to wait until they've got Oprah money or the Obama money in order to be philanthropists. It's like she says, turn around. There's somebody behind you that could use your help. Where you are now, you are capable. You don't have to wait until you have a slew of money to be like, oh, now I'm going to donate, or now I'm going to, build a school in Africa, or I'm going to build a school in Europe. There's something that you could be doing, someone who could benefit from you if you would just turn around.
So good.
Yeah. I stole that from her.
That's what we all do. That's what learning is all about, right? It's just kind of creating and collating all the things that have moved us.
Yeah.
And affected us and made us who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Was there sort of a yearning for you to do something that made her say turn around?
No, it was just, we struggled as a family, and I saw her do that. And it was like, if only there was somebody who was, like the Camel Kids Foundation when we were in school, that could provide assistance and help. And it was something that she could use, so she really wished that somebody would turn around for her. And so now that I'm capable, it just makes me, you can hear the echo. It's just like, no, I've definitely got to turn around, and help somebody else. So.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
I think it shows how much you love your mom, too.
I adore her. She's my heart.
I feel like this has been a wonderful conversation.
This has been a great conversation, Stephanie. It's been great.
One more chance for where people can find you online. Let's hear all of your website, your social media.
Our website, www.camelkidsfoundation.org. It has a ton of information about who we are and why we exist in this world. Our social media handles are all the same. They are Camel Kids FNDN, which is the initial for foundation. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. They can send us an email via the website. It has hello@camelkidsfoundation.org.
Okay. Marelle Camel.
Marelle Camel. You got it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Remember, the idea behind this Another Door Opens podcast is to open doors, open hearts, and open minds. Everyone has a story to share and lessons that we can learn from them. Every week you'll meet someone new and interesting here to download some of their life insights. I mean, why not? Also, please continue to download the podcast, share it with friends, and hop onto iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to it. If you've enjoyed it, please take a few minutes to give it a 5-star review and share it with your friends. You can follow the Another Door Opens podcast online at podcastado on Instagram and Twitter. That's at podcastado. Before I share my story of another door opening today, I want to thank Eric Brown, who made those funky beats in Los Angeles. And thank you to Jonathan Raz, who edited the podcast from Berlin. And to my guest, Marelle Camel. Thank you for sharing your journey with us and guiding young people and educators toward books that will inspire future generations and show them from a very early age that there are no limits to what they can become. Rather than giving an example of another door opening in my own life, like I will frequently do at the end of the podcast, today I'm sharing with you a starting reading list for young people in your life. These are books recommended by MARELLE Camel and the Camel Kids Foundation, and a little bit about why she selected each one. Here they are in no particular order. Number 1, Brothers of the Night by Debbie Allen. We shared this one to highlight the fact that dance is not just for little girls. Boys dance too. We want to encourage boys of any age to participate in the arts. Number 2, Sophie Washington, The Snitch by Tonya, Duncan, Ellis. We shared this one because it teaches kids that bullying is not okay and that it is okay to be labeled a snitch by other kids if you choose to report a bully in school. We want to empower our Camel kids to speak up when someone does someone else harm. Number 3, Miami Jackson Sees It Through by Patricia and Fredrick McKissack. We shared this one because it follows the story of a boy who has a tough time making it through his 4th grade school year because he deems his new teacher too tough. The kids really enjoyed this one and gave us a lot of feedback. They let me know that they had also had difficult and mean teachers, and so we talked with the kids in that class for a couple hours about how to handle having a strict teacher. Number 4, Ellray Jakes, The Recess King by Sally Warner, which deals with a young boy who has trouble making friends, which is unfortunately the story of many kids. Number 5, The Meteorologist in Me by Brittney Shipp, which teaches kids that science is fun and interesting, especially when learning about the weather. We want to encourage kids, especially little girls, to develop a love for science and math. Number 6, Front Desk by Kelly Yang. This one deals with a 10-year-old Asian immigrant girl who has a tough time perfecting her English and adjusting to her new life, as she and her parents have just moved to the States. We chose this book because it teaches our Camel kids to have compassion for immigrant kids who may join the class anytime during the school year or who may be new to their neighborhood. Kids need to know that having a classmate or neighbor of a different race is not a bad thing. Acceptance is what's important. And that is the list. That's also this week's episode of Another Door Opens podcast. Thank you for being here. Hop on Instagram and tell me in the comments a short story about a door opening in your life. Okay, see you guys next time. Love you, bye.